Well, hello everyone, and welcome to. I'm losing count now of how many episodes we're on. See, there you go. Just ask the team; they always know. So, as ever, let me go to that side. Toby, please introduce yourself. I'm not going to make the mistake again.
My name is Toby. I'm very, very tired because I stayed up all night watching the Super Bowl, which I know, Sam, in your side of the family, will be very happy with your husband being a Chiefs fan and all his family. What a long, drawn out affair that was yesterday. I just wanted to go to bed. Why did we have to go to overtime? But yeah, I'm here. I'm ready, I think.
This is going to be good today. I can feel it already.
Man.
Callie, can you add some energy to poor old Toby?
I forgot the Super Bowl happened already, and I was there till the end. I wasn't watching. I was just in its periphery. And then I've heard that Nickelodeon is actually the place you want to watch it. And
Lots
I
of
wish
SpongeBob SquarePants going on in the Nickelodeon one.
Oh man, that's fantastic. So I'm sad that I found out about that this morning and not yesterday afternoon. Sam?
Great. So I'm Sam, and between yes, very happy household that we've got here today. Go Chiefs and SpongeBob SquarePants and everything else. Welcome to HR Breakfast USA, where actually our theme today is our alumni and really how they are our secret weapon. And I want to start with some research I did actually, and it's really made me think. Here I am saying how great alumni are, and really they're a cracking way to find out and stay connected with people in the market, to see who's doing what, to test things out, to so many great things. And yet, as part of research for today's show, I went to Goldman Sachs, for which for my sins I was at early on, knowing I'm an alumni member and I can no longer find my membership. And I so frequently remember getting the emails about we're doing this event, we're doing that event. So, my first question to both of you is: are you part of any alumni, and how do you use it? Toby.
That's an easy one. No. Next question.
Great. Okay. Callie.
Also no.
Interesting. So, one of the things that I keep thinking about with alumni is that with the longevity shortening to someone being in an organization for maybe 2.5 years, and that I think will continue to decrease with the increase of more of a consultancy driven workforce. How can organizations better use, wrong word, better embrace their alumni? Toby.
Well, I think I said one of my hot takes for the day thing was like just start. Like the fact that me and Callie aren't part of one is, I imagine, because when you started talking about it, I was like, oh, it's a thing. It's like like university, I get, and I hear that kind of things, but like from a organizational perspective, I think it's quite. I believe it's quite rare. I don't know anyone who. No one's ever talked to me about them, apart from you right now. So I think there's a lot to be said for managing that community, because I think we've said in previous shows that can return in recruitment recruitment referrals, sales, partnerships, and they may come back at some point and join the organization in the future with greater experience and a greater skill set. So it's kind of in the organization's best interest to manage an alumni network, because it can save and make money, and therefore be a real commercial differentiator to the organization, which I think we can all agree HR needs to not necessarily do more in that space. It just needs to validate that it is having that commercial impact. And I've just finished reading a book this morning, actually. I say reading, it's an audio book, cheating. One and a half times speed. I read it really quick. But in terms of, customer success and how they work with customers to make sure that, when they leave, they engage with them and they, try and make sure that there's a higher chance of them coming back. Like, again, you don't just cut and run when someone decides they're going to leave or they're made redundant or they get promoted. That relationship is still there to be managed. And I think it's just a little bit of a false economy to stop then, even though it feels like you should. You really shouldn't.
Callie.
I think the better place to start, or not better place, I don't mean that. The first place to start is with an unofficial alumni network, right? If we leave people better than we found them, we leave people with a good taste for who we are, what we do, and why we do it, then our reputation will precede us in so many ways that we never expected. And so I don't know that even, I guess the idea of having more formal alumni networks was also new to me, but I think the informal networks that we create are so powerful and so easy for us to start doing better and more effectively to our own benefit.
So what I'm hearing is it doesn't necessarily have to be an alumni per se, such as what we had with Goldman Sachs, where people who are doing wonderful things and forming new companies are. The power, it goes back to something that, I mean, let's face it, we've all met through networking and networks and that sort of thing. It goes back to the power of the network. So actually, is the question how we can help our individuals collectively impact and increase the power of their networks versus an alumni, and who should manage that?
Who should manage it? That's a really interesting one because,
Isn't it?
and I'm presuming mainly virtually here, so there's a lot of assumptions, but like mainly digital community needs actively managing, and your informal alumni are probably not going to start and maintain that themselves. So whilst there's going to be a net benefit for them because they'll network and they'll get to know, peers that have worked there before and after and all this kind of stuff. No one is probably actively going to do that unless they are like a super advocate of that organization. Like, I want to bring all these people together and create this community. So it needs managing, and it needs managing with intent. So that kind of falls on the organization to do that. And I think it's to Callie's point that you kind of you've got to be building up that relationship and that idea way before they even decide to leave, right? That it's kind of, it's almost like an expectation that we've got this great alumni network that you can join. And I think the informality of it is absolutely fine. Like I would be interested to hear more about like the more formal Goldman Sachs approach, like over and above being connected with peers that have worked at the same organization. What else is there you can get other than, I don't know, cash?
If my memory serves me right, from what I used to see on it, it's update on what some of the alumni are doing, companies they formed, if they were still in the same space, what series of funding they were raising, how it's helping the community, things around charitable elements that maybe people were doing. Again, if my memory serves me right, I think there were regular in-person events that were organized to keep people connected. And there was just a general update on Goldman Sachs and what they were doing. And it was really interesting to see what other people were going on, to see how they were evolving, the businesses that they were doing in that community and how that formed. And actually, I thought that was really clever because in time, from, with my way of thinking on, I was thinking what you're creating here is the ability to be able to, for some of these ex-employees to now become clients in a really clever way. So that's the other thing that, when we look at an alumni as a secret weapon, because of how we're working in the world of work and how that evolves, so many of these employees, to Callie's point, if someone leaves and they leave well and it's a cracking relationship, oh, hello, outplacement isn't a wonderful thing. If that's the case, they can then become a client, but you can almost host this cluster of clients through the alumni.
Well, and then, well, it goes back to that's a commercial differentiator, so that is hugely beneficial to the organization. And if the HR team can be like proactively like gathering leads for a sales team, I haven't really heard of a HR team doing that, but that would be kind of special. So, but in that regard, also, it can't be done in isolation of the rest of the organization as well. That it has to be intrinsically linked to the business strategy, as pretty much everything HR should be doing should be linked with the business strategy. So, therefore, it's to kind of get the sales team involved, maybe even marketing, in that the who are great and phenomenal at community management and networking anyway, to leverage their expertise to make that happen and create that community with intent, and with probably some associated performance metrics as well. Not that you have to go out there and tell the alumni themselves, oh, the reason why we're connecting you all together is because we want to make more sales. But from an internal perspective, there's nothing wrong with kind of having that strategy to do that, because it gives you focus in how you manage and create that community. Otherwise, it's just like, hey, wouldn't it be nice just to all keep connected? And you're like, well, yeah, it would. But to be fair, WhatsApp and LinkedIn and all those kind of things already exist to make that happen. So what is the key reason that either the organization or an individual would join that community? And well, there's got to be benefit for both as well, right? Because if it is just a sales initiative from the business, ain't nobody going to join that, because they feel like they're kind of being used somewhat. So to your point, Sam, like what value are those individuals then getting back becomes even more important, because you need something to kind of entice them in.
Yeah. Callie, have you got anything to add to that bit?
I think it's fascinating, and I think that's part of the beauty of us saying, hey, that's a great topic, and not having a ton of time before, because I thought this conversation was going to go a very different place than like the opportunity to have truly formalized networks that way. I would love to know how involved, and I guess this is a question for you, like how involved do they get people before they're technically an alumni?
I remember filling in a form. So I was back at Goldman Sachs back in the day, for anyone watching who's Goldman Sachs, when it was Peterborough Court on Fleet Street. So way before the days of Canary Wharf, right? And I needed to fill in a form about my job title and the years I was in attendance at Goldman Sachs. And then that gave me access to it. But I think as we've been talking and looking at it, there's that correlation again keeps coming round between the marketing team and the HR team. And Callie, I think you'll remember, and I sent it to you, Toby, recently, when I spoke at Disrupt HR Minneapolis, one of my last slides was about the fact that actually the HR team are now the greatest sales team on earth, because they're the ones who've got to say, why come work with us? Here's what we offer. Toby, with what you do with the whole employee experience thing, and really making sure they're being treated as a client in their own right, and really having that increased level of connectivity and value, etc. Is this yet another great example of why that marriage, if you like, between the HR and the marketing is becoming more and more important, because it's not just through the attraction, engagement and onboarding and the duration of your time with that organization. It's also about how you interact with that company once you've gone.
It's an interesting one. I'm just reflecting on the last like 3-4 times I've left a company, and kind of what the end has meant. And quite bluntly, in all 4-5 situations, I'm trying to go back as far as I can, like I've wanted to be as far away from that organization as possible, for various reasons, not necessarily all related to the leadership or the company itself. It's just like it needs some time and space. So there's an element of time. Like if you're
Mhm.
going to leave an organization, you're obviously leaving with some. There's a reason, right? And it's to make sure that when that moment comes, it's not a surprise to everyone, or just not a surprise to anyone, because you're going to want to engage them as much as possible. But I think, yeah, if you do the whole end-to-end employee experience design right, alumni probably just happens quite naturally. But in some organizations where there's been like quite large-scale redundancies, there's kind of been WhatsApp groups like which are almost the opposite of alumni, which are like, yeah, we don't like this company anymore, they're rubbish, and it just becomes a bit of a moaning WhatsApp group. And I've been part of a few of them, and even with people who still work in those companies as well, because they're like, obviously, when redundancy happens, everyone focuses on the people that have been let go. But there are
Mhm.
also people who are staying who also feel pretty rubbish about the situation because their friends and colleagues have kind of been put through the mill. And so when you get to that stage, it's like, well, does anyone want to talk about all of this stuff? Because at some point, we're just going to want to have a moan. And all of a sudden, no one from the organization's perspective is going to community manage moaning about the organization and how it's treated its employees over 6 months, 18 months, whatever. So it's a real balancing act in that regard to make sure that that group becomes mutually beneficial for all. But I suppose if your employees are creating WhatsApp groups about your organization, then maybe you need to work a little bit harder in your employee experience because, well, there's two things. That shouldn't really be happening, but also there's a lot of user insight happening in there that you can get some true understanding about how your employees are thinking and feeling, and then use that to your benefit and create that.
Hey, there just might be a way to do that. Yeah, I think we focus too much on what can our employees do for us while they're here. And we
Yes.
don't really think about the before and the after and how significant those are, or especially with how connected companies are to the rest of the world between Glassdoor and LinkedIn. With a lot of people searching for jobs right now, I get a lot of messages in LinkedIn saying, "Hey, you're connected to this person. I applied to a job. Any way you can help me out at all." And so people are doing that, I think, on both ends. And there's just been sort of this like wall of what
Mhm.
happens here stops here, which doesn't really help anyone. So maybe that first step is to acknowledge what we were talking about a couple episodes before of just kind of, this inspired turnover idea, and how do we focus more on the positive of someone coming and or leaving, and use that as sort of our launching point for how to engage in a more productive and successful relationship with people once they are kind of in that departure mode.
Yeah. Yeah. And do we do something novel like introduce swag bags? Give them swag. Thank you for look at different ways that we can really work with our alumni once they've gone, because we give them a welcome pack on the way in. Why aren't we giving them one on the way out?
Just
Daft question, but could it be part of it? I get it if there's large scale redundancies and there's no outplacement, there's animosity, but on that point and that perspective, if those organizations are experiencing that, could some kind of alumni, even for those who are there, creating that community feeling, does it have to be when someone's left? That's just come to my mind now.
Well, I
no.
think everything I've been talking about for the past 5 years is you shouldn't wait for that. You should be focusing on that the whole time. But I think from an alumni standpoint, you can break what had been a positive relationship very easily, very quickly, by just having a bad departure. Getting
Right.
too emotionally connected to, well, what's wrong with us, or why, why did things finally mount to the level of it's time to get out of here? versus being more transparent with a relationship from the get-go of like, we're probably not going to be the company that you stay at for 30 years because that's not how the world of work works anymore. Let's make sure that we're both receiving benefits from this relationship.
Toby.
I just agree with everything Kelly said. Like,
Right.
absolutely. Like, if you are trying to create an alumni network out of all the people that have left, then you've left it too late to create that community.
Right.
It starts from the moment they start following your organization on social media. Pretty much that first interaction, or the first time they like or comment on a organization or an employee of that organization's post, that is the start of the employee experience. That is when they start engaging emotionally with the brand, the company, the team, the people. And they stop doing that when they stop engaging with the social media accounts, the people, the network. So we focus a lot on kind of EVP and employer branding to kind of do that at the beginning, and even just the B2C marketing, right, helps do that because it's still pushing out what does that brand look like. Whereas when it gets to the end, it's like, oh, we stopped. We just gave up. We're like, oh, we're done with them now. But it's like, create that with intent. And if you know that that's the end goal, to have a community of ex-employees that are highly engaged with your brand, then you would just completely design the employee experience differently. You wouldn't have this. I drew it the other day at the weekend. It's like the this is HR Breakfast USA. So let's go with the Golden Gate Bridge or the Humber Bridge if you're from where I'm from. But essentially, like, the engagement with HR across with an employee, it kind of starts quite low, and then you get induction, it peaks up, and then they are in the organization, it trails off, and then it kind of gets to the end. It's like, oh, quick, we need to talk to them again. It hits another peak and then drips off again. So it kind of just looks like a suspension bridge, when it's like that dangly bit in the middle needs to come up. Those bits at the end need to come up, and the engagement should be pretty consistent. And then, induction and onboarding is a really great one because, like, it's the biggest topic. It's like, oh, let's fix our induction and onboarding process to make sure that speed to competency improved, we reduce attrition, all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, if you think that one moment in time, if it's like an induction event or those 12 weeks, if you think you're just going to fix those 12 weeks and everything's going to be fine, you're wrong. Because, hey, they're not going to work there for just 12 weeks unless, probation fails on both sides. So it's like, you've got to think broader, longer about all of this. And we talked about this, Sam, on a course that I'm running at the moment. Start with the end. What do you want people to think and feel at the end of this engagement? And work all the way back to the beginning. It's like, okay, what are we doing all the way through this suspension bridge to get them to that place? And if you think like that, you design employee experience completely differently.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to push this back to you two because both of you have left traditional employment, right? Like, what would have made you think that this is something that I'm going to continue to buy into or think is the right path for me versus saying I've got to do my own thing? And maybe I'm putting too much like assumptions from other conversations with other people about like, why do people take the risks to go off and do their own thing? But I think it's valuable to think about, especially with your point about 40% in the next 5 years, right? Becoming independent contractors. So
Yep.
Why do we see such a huge shift, and what would change that shift from happening?
And actually, is there another question here that actually the alumni keeps those who have gone into the consultancy world more connected with their former organizations in order for them to continue to maintain that talent, but help readdress how that relationship's going to be? Because, what's springing to my mind is companies like Goldman Sachs, right? Easy to do. Early on in my career, KPMG, Goldman Sachs, B Sky B, three really big beasts in terms of corporate names. I mean, seriously, can you imagine me today in an organization like that? I'd be fired on the spot within 5 minutes, where I'd go, hang on a minute, you can't do that. That's just rubbish. It doesn't make any sense. Why do? Blah, blah, blah. my point to all of this is there are more and more M's of the medium-sized businesses coming up where they are evolving and changing and growing and developing. And, they are looking at things like, actually, we need someone who's going to head up our marketing and we need a chief marketing officer. So actually, is it that segment of the market that can completely disrupt completely disrupt how alumni have been used today and bring them more into something that's more tangible that we can all say, yeah, I get that and get behind?
I've been in the car for 3 hours today, and I in my head drew a Venn diagram to answer this kind of. I think to answer it, and it's just an idea, right? Is that if you're going to leave an organization in the very best possible way and then still communicate, collaborate, and work with that organization, yes, the relationship has got to end in a mutually beneficial way. And again, no surprises. It can't be a surprise to either party that we get to that moment in time. If it is, then that relationship isn't open and honest and all those kind of things. But if I was to try and remain in contact with a network of employees at previous organizations, I was thinking like, well, purpose, first of all. If you truly believe in the purpose of that organization and what they're doing, and it just transpires that for your own objectives, you're going to go somewhere else, then the purpose still will link you back there. And I think in the organizations I've left, typically, like I fell out of touch with what the purpose was. There became that misalignment. And it was kind of, especially in large corporates, right? It's the on the bus thinking. It's like, you're either on the bus or you're off the bus. It's like, well, yeah, but everyone gets on and off buses all the time. Like, it's not like a state of I'm always on a bus. You can like allow people to get on and off that bus, and that bus is the purpose bus. Such a weird analogy. The other one is the people, and that's where everyone comes back to. From induction right to leaving, they always kind of go, "Oh, the people were the thing that made that happen." It's like, well, no one actively is going to like connect with people they didn't get on with or didn't like, but you got to give them the opportunity to have that link to those people and it feel natural and organic rather than forced. That's the other thing. But that kind of thing is like when you get off the bus, it's kind of like, oh, so and so's just got off the bus. See you later. You're not on the bus anymore. Bye bye. And they kind of like shuffle them off. And it's like, well, no, that just because my mission has changed, I'm not totally aligned with the purpose, or I've got career aspirations beyond what the bus can offer me. Everyone should get off the bus and a round of applause to get off the bus, and hey, let's wish them well. And therefore then the people becomes really important. Then there's the intrinsic motivation about why you'd engage with that community as well. Is like, okay, so if you've got purpose, any other motivation, people, if you have the perfect Venn diagram and sit that in the middle, then alumni will just want to stay connected. If any of those kind of pull out, then you're like, well, there's nothing in it for me, I guess.
So many things going on around in my head right now. Callie.
Oh man. Closing thoughts, transition, right? I'm speechless. I have so many thoughts in my head too, just about how you start to build a more thoughtful approach to that connection point.
Nice. Thank you, Callie. Toby, closing thoughts.
I'm going to just agree with what Callie said again. It's like that's all it needs to be, is that it's got to be built on empathy and understanding and of other people. And it's the kind of thing that AI won't be able to do for quite a while, is build that empathy and rapport with those people. So leverage that talent you have to do that and make it happen. Because if you think someone else is going to do it, they're not. Like, someone needs to grab it by the scruff of the neck and actually do it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I have buses, the Golden Gate Bridge, and all sorts of other things going on in terms of the visuals. But I think the big takeaway for me is actually how we re-engineer what an alumni is to make it relevant to today's workforce and what we're heading into. So again, it goes back to that big word, relevance, for me. And we are bang on 30 minutes. So I'd like to say thank you, Toby.
Thank you. And can I like wrap this up with a lovely little bow? We started the talk talking about the Super Bowl, and we've ended with the
Yes.
mention of bridges, the Golden Gate Bridge, which is based in San Francisco, and the 49ers lost. So there we go. We come full circle. Sorry, Mr. Irrelevant. You truly are now irrelevant.
And on that, bye everyone. See you next week.
See you next week.